There's a moment deep in the silence of the night when the world sleeps but something else awakens. Have you ever laid in bed, unable to sleep, not because of anxiety or noise, but because something inside you was stirring? Something ancient, something eternal. That moment, at midnight or just past it, is not random. It's not insomnia. It's a sacred call. A whisper from the universe that only the spiritually elite can truly hear. And if you're here watching this, it means you've felt it. You've tasted that stillness. You've sensed the pull. The 7 signs? They're not just signs. They're keys. They unlock levels of awareness most people never reach. But first, I want to ask you something. When the world goes quiet, do you feel more alive? Let me take you back to a night I'll never forget. I was in a tiny cabin far from the city, surrounded by forest and fog, and the clock struck 12:44 a.m. I woke up not groggy, not disturbed, just aware. It was as if my spirit had chosen to rise. The air was thick with silence, and yet I could feel something communicating. Not in words, in energy. I stepped outside barefoot. The earth felt cold and grounding beneath me. The trees weren't just trees, they were ancient watchers. And in that moment I knew something was different. That was the first sign, waking up at midnight with presence, not panic. If this has happened to you, you're not broken. You're being summoned. The spiritually elite don't sleep the way others do. Their rest is interrupted by the divine.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
But what happens next is even more powerful. The second sign is when your thoughts begin to shift in those midnight moments. Imagine this, it's 1:13 a.m. You're lying there, and suddenly your mind isn't racing with stress or to-do lists. It's unraveling truths, patterns you never noticed before, deep realizations. You're not thinking. You're receiving ideas, insights, even answers to questions you didn't know you were asking. Most people ignore these downloads. They roll over, scroll their phones, or pop a pill to sleep. But you sit with it. You write, you reflect, you listen. That's spiritual elitism, not ego, not superiority, but a sacred responsibility to receive and respond to the whispers of the infinite. Now, the third sign is subtle but profound. It's when your body begins to synchronize with the cosmos. You might notice your heart beating in a slower, deeper rhythm. You might feel heat in your palms or forehead. Some feel tingling in the spine or an inexplicable sense of expansion in the chest. These are not hallucinations. They're activations. Your physical body is responding to energetic frequencies that only become accessible when the veil is thin. And the veil? It's thinnest at midnight. You are literally tuning into the frequency of the universe. And only those on a certain spiritual wavelength can even perceive that it exists. Have you ever felt your body respond to something invisible? Something unprovoked, yet undeniably real? Let's go deeper. The fourth sign is what I call time dilation. You lose track of time not because you're distracted, but because time begins to stretch. A few minutes feel like hours, or vice versa. You look at the clock, and it's 2:02 a.m. You close your eyes, feel like you've journeyed through 1,000 thoughts, opened 100 portals, and then you look again, and it's only 2:03. This is evidence that you're partially slipping out of linear time. Spiritually elite individuals can access the eternal present. It's not a metaphor, it's an actual state. Time bends around presence. And when you're deeply present at midnight, you're no longer bound by the same laws. You become a witness to the infinite, not just a traveler in the temporary. And then comes the fifth sign. It's perhaps the most misunderstood. It's when fear arises, but not the fear of the world. It's the fear of your own vastness. Let me explain. In the dead of night, when noise fades and distractions dissolve, what's left is you. Not the identity you show the world, but the infinite being behind the mask. And when you start to feel how limitless you truly are, it can be terrifying. Your ego trembles. Your mind resists. You might feel a sudden existential panic, a deep question rising. What am I really? That fear? It's not weakness. It's the threshold. It's the final guardian before a new level of spiritual perception unfolds. And most people turn back. But if you walk through that fear, if you sit with it, you awaken something ancient. So now ask yourself, have you felt these signs? Even just one? Because if you have, you're not ordinary. You're not random. You're being initiated. Not by a guru, not by a book, but by the universe itself. The midnight hour is not just a time, it's a doorway. And only a few are brave enough to walk through it. Let's pause for a moment and consider this. Why do you think the most profound spiritual awakenings happen in silence? In solitude? In the stillness of night? It's because truth doesn't scream, it whispers. And the spiritually elite are the ones who've trained themselves to listen not just with their ears, but with their entire being. So the real question isn't, why am I awake at midnight? The real question is, what is trying to awaken within me? Imagine if every time you woke up at midnight, instead of reaching for your phone, you reached inward. Imagine if you treated those moments as sacred appointments with your soul, because that's exactly what they are. You're being called not to escape the world, but to transcend it. Not to isolate, but to integrate higher dimensions of awareness into your daily life. That is the true mark of spiritual elitism, not detachment, but deep, conscious engagement with everything, from the mundane to the mystical. And if you're still watching this, still listening, you've already proven something rare. You're not just curious. You're ready. Ready to see the world not as it appears, but as it truly is. You're ready to wake up not just from sleep, but from illusion. And the midnight hour is your invitation. So next time you wake up at 2:22 a.m., don't fight it. Don't fear it. Feel it. Enter it. Become it. Because those 7 signs, they're not random. They're not coincidence. They're a map, a signal, a sacred reminder that you, out of billions, have been chosen to remember who you truly are. There's a moment when the silence becomes so loud, it starts to echo inside your soul. If you've ever been awake at 3 a.m., not out of anxiety, but because something called you into stillness, then you've already met your teacher. Midnight is that strange, sacred hour when the veil between the physical and the spiritual thins, not metaphorically, but literally. And when that veil thins, the universe stops whispering and starts speaking in ways only the spiritually elite can understand. Disruption is not punishment, it is initiation. Let me ask you, what if the reason your sleep is broken is because your spirit is breaking free? We're taught to fear disruption, to seek comfort, to create routines and cling to predictability. But the spiritually elite understand something deeper. They know that true transformation never happens inside the comfort zone. Midnight is a divine disruption ripping you out of the illusion so you can finally see. It's not about insomnia, it's about initiation. It's not about darkness, it's about depth. When your body wakes up unprovoked and your mind is unusually clear, that's not biology, that's alignment. You are being pulled into a classroom where the teacher is silence and the subject is truth. Let's talk about the sixth sign. You begin hearing, or rather sensing, messages that aren't from your thoughts. These aren't voices in the way we usually understand them. They're frequencies, impressions, downloads. Have you ever sat up in bed and felt like a sentence just landed in your mind fully formed? Like a truth you didn't read or hear, but somehow knew? This is not imagination, it's reception. The spiritually elite become antennas at midnight. They don't need to search for wisdom, it arrives, and it often arrives with a strange familiarity. As if you're not learning, you're remembering. When I was deep in the mountains of Nepal, I spent 3 nights without sleep. Not because I was restless, but because the energy was so alive I couldn't close my eyes. I sat in the dark, wrapped in blankets, and I knew this is the real temple. Not the building, not the statues, but the moment. The midnight moment. And in those hours I understood something profound. The universe speaks most clearly when everything else is quiet. That's why the spiritually elite crave solitude. Not because they're antisocial, but because they've tasted the nectar of stillness. And once you've heard the voice of your soul at 3:33 a.m., small talk becomes unbearable. Now here's something most people don't realize. The 7th sign isn't about feeling elevated, but feeling empty. That's right. In the middle of the night, you may feel a strange sense of void, not depression, not sadness, but a kind of cosmic emptiness. It's as if every identity you've worn, every belief you've clung to, starts fading. And you're left with nothing, just being. That void is sacred. It's terrifying, yes, but it's also the birthplace of everything real. The spiritually elite don't run from that emptiness. They bow to it, because they know only when the cup is empty can the divine pour in. Let me ask you something deep. Who are you when nothing is distracting you? When there's no noise, no mirror, no feedback, just you and the infinite? That's what midnight reveals. It strips away the masks. It peels back the layers. And if you're courageous enough to sit in that nakedness, you'll find a self that is not defined by titles, achievements, or history. You'll find the eternal part of you, the part that was never born and will never die. But here's the paradox. Most people are terrified of this truth. That's why they medicate it, distract it, scroll it away. But you stayed. You heard the call. You let the divine disrupt your sleep, your schedule, your sense of control. And that's what makes you spiritually elite, not perfection, but presence. Not knowledge, but awareness. The spiritually elite are not the ones who know the most. They're the ones who are willing to know everything they've been taught, just to hear the universe speak for itself. Now let's return to the body for a moment. At midnight, your physiology isn't just resting, it's recalibrating. The organs are going through cleansing cycles. Your brain is shifting into slower wave states. But if you're awake and spiritually attuned, you can ride those frequencies. You can consciously tune into the theta and delta states, normally only accessed in deep meditation or sleep. That's why some of the most profound inner work happens not during the day, but at night. In fact, some ancient mystics believed that the hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. were when the soul was most free to commune with higher realms. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you work with these signs instead of resisting them? Here's the practice. The next time you wake up in the middle of the night, don't reach for your phone. Don't turn on the lights. Sit up. Breathe deeply. Ask the silence a question. Wait. Write down what comes. Even if it seems strange. Even if it's just a feeling. Trust that you've been brought into this moment for a reason. The universe does not waste energy. If you're awake, it's because something within you is being awakened. Let's get practical. Keep a journal by your bed. Call it your midnight mirror. Every time you wake up, write down what you feel, what you hear, what you see in your mind's eye. Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll start to see that these aren't random moments. They're part of a larger dialogue, a sacred conversation between your soul and the source. And the more you listen, the louder the truth becomes. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in art, science, and philosophy came from these midnight moments. Nikola Tesla, Carl Jung, Rumi, even Einstein, many of them spoke of receiving insights in the liminal hours of the night. Why? Because the mind is quiet, the ego is asleep, and the soul is wide awake. So what if your midnight awakenings aren't a problem to fix, but a portal to walk through? The spiritually elite don't see the night as an inconvenience. They see it as a temple, a private audience with the divine. And once you realize that, you stop fighting the darkness. You start dancing with it. Because in that darkness, you don't just find answers. You find yourself. So now we've uncovered 7 signs. But the signs are just the beginning. What matters is how you respond. Will you go back to sleep? Or will you wake up not just physically, but spiritually? Because once you say yes to the midnight call, your life will never be the same. You'll see things others can't, feel things others ignore, and know things others dismiss. That's the cost and the gift of spiritual elitism. You don't get to be normal. You get to be awake. There's a secret encoded in the silence of the night one that most people will never discover. Not because it's hidden, but because it requires stillness to be heard. And stillness in today's world is rare. But you're different. If you're still watching, still listening, it means that something ancient inside you has begun to stir. The soul doesn't speak in language, it speaks in timing. And midnight is its most sacred hour. Have you noticed how your senses sharpen at night? How the ticking of a clock suddenly feels like thunder? How a soft breeze through the window can feel like a message? That sensitivity isn't weakness. It's a sign that your soul is online. The noise of the day numbs us, but the night strips it all away. It's just you, your breath, your thoughts, and something beyond them. You begin to sense that your soul has its own rhythm, its own memories, its own intelligence, and midnight is when it chooses to speak. You see, most people will never understand this. They'll chase certifications, spiritual influencers, and weekend retreats. But the real initiation happens in solitude, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. That's when the soul reveals its truth. That's when you remember who you are without the performance. So if you've ever felt alone at 3 a.m., know this: you weren't alone. You were in audience with the infinite. And only the spiritually elite are even invited to that meeting. Here's the paradox. When you awaken at midnight, it may feel like disruption. But it's actually a return. You're returning to your original frequency, the one you had before the world told you who to be. That's why it can feel emotional. You might cry for no reason. You might feel awe or grief or peace so deep it scares you. That's not weakness. That's remembrance. Your soul remembers what it's like to be limitless. And in the stillness of night, that memory comes rushing back. So here's the question I leave you with. What if your entire life has been preparing you for these midnight moments? What if the pain, the confusion, the longing was all leading to this? A chance to wake up, not from sleep, but from illusion. A chance to see what most will never even glimpse. And to become what you've always been beneath the noise, a vessel of truth, a carrier of light, a soul that knows.